I'd like to think I'm improving and addressing a lot of the flaws and the ways in which I think or act that I'd like to do differently or do better. But one of the areas that I still struggle with is with silence. I joke about it with my brother all the time, but whether it be in a live conversation or on the phone or text, when there's silence, that always makes me uncomfortable. There's always an uneasiness there, and I typically, if not almost always, am the one that feels the need to break that silence in some way or some form. And there's lots of reasons for that, right, that I can go into and maybe will in another video. But what I've realized is in some cases, where it makes me really uncomfortable is when I've said something that I guess makes me vulnerable. I guess that's ultimately what it comes down to. It's fear, as it usually always is. There's a vulnerability in it, right? If I say something to my boss, for example, if I feel like she's not handling something correctly, or she's asking for things that are too much, and I want to make the point that I disagree with the approach, or that I'm not going to be able to get the work done that she needs because there's just too much being asked, and I have to prioritize in some way. There's a vulnerability there. There's a fear there. In some ways, I'm exposing my thinking and my logic. I'm showing my work in a way in which it puts it under scrutiny. It's the same thing if I'm in a conversation with somebody and I put forth kind of a concept or a theory that I think might be true, and then there's silence behind it. Now my mind starts to work. Do they think it's stupid? Do they disagree with it? Do they not care? Are they just distracted and thinking about something else? There's a deep vulnerability in that I think I struggle with. And as I'm working through it, I'm trying to take the normal approach I would take. I'm trying to understand the mechanics of it, the logic behind that thinking. And then once I come to somewhat of a view of what I should be doing differently, just execute on it. So in this scenario, I think the math, the logic is relatively clear, right? Back to the boss example. If she says something that I disagree with, and I feel like, hey, I've done the thinking, I'm being thoughtful about it, and I'm going to put forth this response, and I feel confident in that, the math is clear. Then I should feel confident in that. And if there's silence, if she's uncomfortable with it, if she says something, right? If she says something that I personally then don't agree with or I don't think is relevant, I should feel confident to be silent and kind of put that back on her and force her to have that same vulnerable moment, in theory, of, she's put forth some view now, and now that's under scrutiny, right? I should have the confidence to do that, but I think it's a mental toughness issue of still, that fear still takes over. I want to try and control the situation as best I can. I want to bring comfort to it. If I put in a ha-ha, or if I lighten the mood and make a joke, or if I kind of become agreeable and say, oh, okay, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, okay, maybe that makes sense. In the moment, I've now released that fear, that vulnerability, and ultimately in generic form, that discomfort. And that's what I'm doing. I'm taking that out. I'm almost hitting the safety valve and saying, release that. I can't handle it. I need to say something or do something here. But it's so counterproductive and illogical, frankly. If you are thoughtful and deliberate in your logic and your work and your view that you're putting forth, or the statement that you make, you should have no fear of the silence around it. You should have no fear of the vulnerability. Let that be analyzed, let that be assessed, let it be exposed, and in whichever way it needs to be, through silence or through some comment that comes back. But stand by it. Have the confidence in that to do that. So I had an example that came up actually in work today, which was very similar, and it was through a Slack exchange where something was asked of me, a number of different things, and then another thing was asked, are we doing this? Have we got this done yet? And I said, well, it's on the list. It's on the list of things. And my boss responded and said, with a laughing face, because I think she was doing the same thing, trying to kind of break the tension, laughing face, did you really just say it's on the list? And I said, yes. Is that bad? ? And she said, coming from you, yes, haha, another laughing face. And I witnessed in that interaction, it became somewhat clear to me, my own side, how I would normally react to this. The being questioned on that, me saying it's on the list, which is a true statement. There's a long list, it is on that list, and it's being worked on. I understand the implication that comes with it, which is like, hey, there's a lot of stuff to get done. It's one of many. It's not top priority right now. And I meant that. I literally meant that. When she came back and said, "Did you say that?" It wasn't quite silence, but it was that, "Hey, I'm going to make you vulnerable right now. I'm going to expose your thinking on that and see, is that what you really meant?" And my response was, "Yeah. And furthermore, show me your work. Is that bad? What's wrong with saying that?" And when she came back, again, jokingly, it also makes it clear to me from her side. She is playing off of that too. She's trying to break tension. She's trying to get her point across, but she's trying to do it in a subtle way. And it illustrates the power of this, right? The two sides of it, why it's such a thing that I struggle with. It can be useful to use because it forces people to expose their work. By me not responding back with a ha-ha or a kind of an agreeable term, she's forced to think, well, what I just said, is that right? Why isn't he answering? Why isn't he responding, etc.? And it also, from my side, can make me uncomfortable when she does it to me. So, just an interesting thing to think about in these dynamics of conversations and relationships that we have, how this back and forth happens, the kind of back and forth of showing our work and our thinking and how it's being received and the vulnerability of it. And I think, as I mentioned in the beginning, silence is a good illustrator of this, among other things. But my big takeaway is the thoughtfulness of it, right? Be deliberate. Be deliberate in the statements you make and how you're thinking. Be deliberate in how you handle a conversation, when you speak and when you don't speak, what you say and what you don't say. And as long as your objective is pure and in good faith, you really shouldn't have to feel too much vulnerability around that.